Hey, it's Andrew with PSTC, and your 2-minute training on chemical suicides starts right now. We deal with suicide probably every day, or at least every week, in every single one of our organizations. And one of the quote-unquote newer types of suicide comes down to chemical suicide. Now, I just want to say right off the bat, regardless of how you feel about suicide, whether people should do it or people shouldn't do it, it doesn't really matter. We have the opportunity to protect them, but more importantly, when it comes down to chemical suicide, we have the opportunity to protect our first responders. It might sound kind of weird, but a lot of the folks who use chemical suicide as a method of killing themselves or ending their own life, they're actually very thoughtful folks. They hang signs, they put up notes on their cars or wherever the area is that they've confined for the chemical aspect. They don't want other people injured. They don't want the first responders to become ill or even worse, death when they approach the scene and recognize that this has some gaseous cloud or whatever it happens to be. But the only way that we'll know, or the only way that we'll be able to identify whether or not this may or may not be a chemical suicide, is by asking better questions to get those better answers. So a few questions that you might want to think about when it comes down to suicide, especially related to perhaps a car or a confined space, is number one, is there any sign or a note, or even sometimes they'll use like lipstick or some paint on chalk or Sharpie markers, and they'll write messages on the windows saying, hey, this is a suicide, this is chemical suicide, stay away, stand back from the car. Your law enforcement, fire, and EMS responders need to know that information because they'll approach it much differently. Some of the other questions that you may ask is there a pipe or some sort of a hose or a tube running from the exhaust pipe of the car into the actual car itself through one of the windows? That usually is a pretty good telltale sign that they're attempting to commit chemical suicide. So from the first responder aspect, again, law, fire, or EMS, when they approach these, it has to be approached as an actual hazmat. So you may end up calling out the hazmat team, they may end up wearing some different uniforms or bodysuits or whatever it comes down to. But again, they base their response off of what we give them and the information that we're able to obtain from the caller. So do yourself a favor, study a little bit more on chemical suicides. Feel free to take a look around at reputable sites on the internet and just become more familiar with the modern day phenomenon of chemical suicides. You might be able to help save a life. That's your 2-minute training. We'll see you next time.